This is Chris Duggan, and you're listening to Vibe 105.
Vibe Talks. Vibe Talks. More than just music.
Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Aulino reporting for Vibe 105 with a Sports VIBEtalks segment where we're going to be talking everything from teaching to golf to coaching, all of that. I have the perfect guest. Happy to be joined by him today. He is a teacher and he had aspirations. He pursued his dream, went into golf. Chris Duggan. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Oh, doing great. I looked at this story. So one day I'm searching online, looking at golf, like in and around the GTA, and a story pops up of a retired teacher turned golf guru. Melanie Pileggi's the author of this. I have to get a shout out to her. And I look at the picture and he looked familiar, and I noticed that's my elementary school teacher. So talk to us a little bit about this decision, retiring from teaching and pursuing a dream in golf. Like, how did that all come about?
Yeah, well, so basically, I guess I'd have to start with my wife. My wife was a photographer with Maclean's magazine and the Toronto Star, and she transitioned into becoming a yoga instructor. And so basically, she came home one day and asked me like what I was going to do when I retired, or we got a little older. And I've always golf's my passion. I've caddied. I've worked at a golf course as a kid. I've been a member at a golf course since I've been about 9 years old. And it's always been my passion. And so I said to her, I'd love to work at a golf course. And at that point, she said, "Go do it. And you only get one crack at life." And so I walked into school and I, made a few phone calls to some people in the union and stuff like that to make sure, you're always paranoid about the pension and the benefits and stuff like that. And so I got all that stuff sort of sorted out, and I was able to go work at a golf course, and they hired me on as basically in a management position at a golf course in Bradford. And from there, I'm able to supply teach in the winters and kind of do a little bit of both, and I still, tutor a little bit on the side and stuff like that. So I still get my teaching fix, but I'm really involved in the golf industry big time now. So yeah, that's basically the story.
Wow. And going into golf, I remember being in your class, obviously, and we all knew the golf figures that you had the pictures in there, the memorabilia, that was all great. And what drew you towards golf? Was it something when you were a kid that you just loved it? What made you interested and a fan of golf at the time?
Yeah, when I was young, I started hitting the ball around when I was about 5, which was really strange at the time because it wasn't the coolest sport, we'll just say, for lack of a better explanation for you. When I was a kid, I remember in elementary school, I would wear 2 different outfits. I would wear an outfit to school, like my jeans and my T-shirt, to kind of conform or fit in. And then I would actually change in the car on the way to the golf course because most of my buddies were not golfers at the time. And, you're a kid and you're influenced by your peers quite a bit. And, so I was a hockey player in the summertime or in the wintertime. And then in the summer, I just transitioned into golf, and my dad was a golfer and my grandfather was a golfer. And so basically I was playing since I was about 5 years old, swinging a club. And that's where I spent my summers. My parents would drop me off at 6 o'clock in the morning. I would play 9 holes. Then I would play, my buddies would show up, and I would just play with whoever would let me play and basically pick me up at 7, 8 o'clock at night. And that's how I spent my summers. And yeah, that was golf for me. And then now it's funny that all those guys that I was sort of hiding my golf equipment from or my golf apparel from, they're all avid golfers now too. So yeah, it just goes to show you. But that's how I got into the game.
And who were some of the, athletes, some of the golfers that you looked up to at the time that really shaped you into that kind of pathway and made you the golfer that you wanted to hopefully replicate?
So I'm a huge Ben Hogan fan. I'm a Ben Hogan. Hogan's my hero. Growing up, when I was a kid, I loved Ben Hogan. And then obviously through my teenage years and early 20s, Tiger Woods has just changed the game of golf to the point now where, athletes are bigger, stronger in the game because of Tiger Woods. There's more money in the game because of Tiger Woods. You have to give him so much credit for this game. So yeah, I was part of the Tiger Woods phenomenon. I love the guy. And, but yeah, I was my 2 favorites obviously were Hogan and Tiger Woods.
And Tiger Woods too, like some people don't really give him the credit at times, like of just how good he was even early on. Like he gets that recognition, that those accolades, but in terms of a golfer, like he pretty much made a training regimen, he made a diet plan, he did everything. So looking back at like Hogan's time, do you think any of the golfers would have been able to translate into what Tiger Woods eventually, that model he made for his era?
Yeah, like Hogan is like Tiger Woods. They actually share one really crazy thing in common that a lot of people don't really give Hogan a lot of credit for. Was Hogan was in a really bad car accident. He was hit by a bus, and he actually rebuilt himself. And he was basically shattered into pieces, and he rebuilt himself and rebuilt his golf game. And he's like one of the greatest comeback stories of all time. But if you don't know golf, you don't really understand that. So he actually worked really, really hard, like physically, to try and get back to the point where he was, able to hit a golf ball even. Like there was talk, I don't even think he was going to be able to walk. And then you have a guy like Tiger Woods who he took it to another level, like in training and whatnot. Like he took it to another level of training, but then also he had this ability to be like, to basically to defeat you before you even stepped on the tee. Like people feared this guy. And it was almost like he was like a not human figure. He was so unbelievable. And then he lost his whole game. His life was shattered. And then he built himself back up again to where he was at the last couple of years, which I think is an amazing comeback story too. So they both share like a crazy comeback story. But Tiger was more of a physical, whereas in Hogan's era and like Jack Nicklaus and that, they did things to maintain their body and stuff like that. But you see a lot of pictures of them smoking cigarettes, doing things, drinking on the side, like, which in this era is not, it's more of a job and it's more physically demanding. Like these guys are athletes now. Like even like your Brooks Koepkas, your Bryson DeChambeau, like these guys are athletes. Like they're not just golfers, we'll say,
Yeah, and Tiger Woods, like now on, he's on the later portion of his career, but from what he's been able to accomplish even in recent years, getting his body back up to where he feels that it needs to be or as good as it can be, do you see him like replicating some of that success, or has he won his last major?
So, I mean, we always hold out hope that he's going to win another one. I think his game suits Augusta. Like he knows Augusta really well at the Masters, so don't be surprised. It's really tricky for him because he doesn't really play a lot before the majors, and he just kind of shows up and tries to play a major, and you can't really win that way. So I think his body's holding him back from doing the training and hitting the amount of balls and even the amount of putts. Like they were talking about the other day, like he has a little bit longer of a putter because it's really bad on your back. It's hard on your back when you have a shorter, like the 34-inch putter was, very hard on his back. And I don't see him winning a lot anymore. He's not even as long as he used to. Like he's not long in comparison to these guys now. Like these guys coming out he's probably like a medium length hitter, we'd say, on the PGA Tour, whereas these guys are hitting it so far now. And so that advantage he had back in the mid 90s, like late 90s, 2000s, he doesn't have that advantage anymore. So I really do think if he wins another one, it'll be another Masters. That would just be my guess, but I'm pulling for him every single time. It's a feel-good story.
Yeah, it is. And for those just joining us here on Vibe 105, we're being joined by teacher and golfer Chris Duggan. Chris, also, now that you're transitioning into the golf courses at the golf club, what's that day-to-day like now? Because now COVID has changed the way that everybody has done things and all other sports. So what's a day-to-day like at the golf course?
So we were in the first wave of COVID with businesses reopening. So we were kind of the very first. We opened up on May 16th officially for the season, and things changed a little bit at the beginning. I mean, most golf courses were doing things like in your cart, you had to ride by yourself unless you were from the same household. You could only arrive 20 minutes before your tee time. So we're still kind of in that same idea. We don't want a lot of people lingering around property. We lost all of our tournaments. Most courses were not allowed to have any tournaments this year because you couldn't have the big gatherings after, the steak dinners and whatnot after. But we were able to get some events in, some charity stuff in. But day to day, the golf is pretty much the same when you're on the golf course. there's a pool noodle in the hole or some sort of device so the ball doesn't fall very far into the hole so that you can just easily pick it out. You're not allowed to touch the flags anymore. There's no rakes on golf courses. They took all the ball washers off. So anything that could be touched by multiple people, that stuff was all removed. And so most golf courses are following the same protocol. And like some courses take your temperature and things like that when you get on property. I've had that done for me at a different couple of places. But for the most part, it was the check-in point, like getting people to the paying part and stuff like that. Once you get people through that, it's pretty much golf is it's still a beautiful, the same game it's been for the last, hundreds of years. So yeah, it's busy though, like busy.
Yeah, and like, did you find it that, like, of course, when this first phase of reopening, do you find more people now coming to golf as a way to escape and maybe get it out, or has it lost the kind of business that it was making before?
So golf is the busiest I've seen golf since probably the early 2000s, since the Tiger Woods craze, we'll call it. Since Tiger was when he was that popular in the early 2000s, golf had a really big resurgence, and then it kind of was dying out in the last few years, and it went to like third-party booking sites. Like you would book your tee time or you'd get a discount through a third party. Now people are like, it's hard to get a tee time. Like if you don't call me at least 5-6 days in advance, you're not golfing. Wow. Like it's like we were selling out 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And like I would turn away over 100 people on a weekend. Just say, I'm sorry, I don't have a tee time. I'm sorry, I don't have a tee time. I'm sorry, I don't have a tee time. So, there was a huge, people were trying it out. It was just something you could get outside and do, right? So, yeah, it was huge. It was busy. The golf courses, the industry did really well this year. And we have to say that the weather cooperated big time. Mother Nature was very good to us this year, and the patios too, like even the restaurants, like, we didn't get a lot of rain out days and stuff like that, so golf was able to make a lot of money and survive, because it was looking pretty dicey that it might not survive without tournaments and things like that, charity events.
And what are some, I guess, strategies or possible things that at your golf course, maybe you can speak on, that they can do in the future in case there's a second wave? Is there like anything planned in case, just to keep business running?
Yeah, so what's going to happen at the golf course, like, so our patio obviously was able to open up, and different golf courses were able to open up their patios. At the beginning of the year, none of us had any of that stuff open. So if a second wave, which is, seems like it's coming now, stuff like that will shut down. Now we're at the tail end of our season, like it's October almost, for us. So at this point we're getting, we only have about a month left, and then we'll be shutting down for this season anyway. So I think we'll be okay, because by the time, next May, hopefully, I don't know if the world will be back to normal by then, but at least because we're an outdoor activity, we're pretty much, I think we'll always be in the first wave of any activities. So other than that, like I said, we limited our food and stuff like that. That's just what our golf course chose to do. Like we just did sort of packaged sandwiches and things like that. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much business as usual with a few modifications.
That's good to hear, because there's been a lot of sports in and around the GTA that even businesses that have taken a negative turn because of COVID. So at least it's good that golf has really stuck to it and business is going well. But just to transition a little bit to teaching, because now with COVID, a lot of different things are happening, different protocols. So going back to teaching, like, would you be a little more hesitant right now based on all the different things that are going on in the classroom and regulations?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not personally. I will gladly go into a classroom and help out, like in when I go supply teach, come November, middle of November. But there's a lot of, I've heard through my friends that are in the school, it's a bit different. Like wearing a mask and things like that, and it's a bit of a different world in there. Like I said, I'm not hesitant myself, but I'm also respectful of other people. And so, I do a lot of things for other people, like I wear my mask and do things because, we have to take care of our elderly population and people who are vulnerable to COVID. So, I just get worried, like the schools, you get a couple cases in a school and then, next thing everyone's getting tested. Everyone's a little fearful. And, I had a friend of mine in his school had a case just recently, and, the attendance dropped drastically in the next couple of days because, parents just were, afraid to send their kids to school. And I totally understand it. It's a new thing, right? Like, we're not used to this. And I mean, I'm sure you're finding it weird too, just with sports, trying to watch sports with no fans. Yeah. It's just a different world that we're living in right now.
Yeah, and speaking of like sports and stuff, like you brought that up there, you were coaching at St. Gabriel the Archangel in Woodbridge when you were teaching there. And I've had the pleasure of being on those teams, championship team, basketball. You were great at that. So what did you enjoy most about coaching sports at elementary level?
Well, I think coaching at the elementary school level brings a different, you get to, like, when you're playing sports and you're in a gym with students, it's a different type of relationship. Like, it's, you're the teacher in the classroom, but then you can kind of let your hair down a little bit when you're in a gym. And I was one of those teachers that I like to play with. I used to play basketball and stuff like that. I like to play sports, and so it's just more fun. Like, it just brought a different element, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. That's the one part I do miss, is the actual hanging out, the coaching. You build some really good bonds and relationships after school when you're in that gym. And we coached pretty hard, and so we were in there 5 days a week and whatever. So it was it was a really good run, and that's the one thing I do miss a little bit. If I had to say one thing about my transition, would be it.
And also, like, speaking of coaching, like basketball, since obviously that time when I had you as a teacher, has gone into upward trend there with the Raptors now. Even last year with Kawhi Leonard, they won the championship. DeMar DeRozan was a catalyst in that, and all those years when things weren't going so well. And now basketball has been popular amongst the youth in GTA in Toronto. Now we even see a lot of players like Jamal Murray in the NBA doing great, and Andrew Wiggins went first overall. So sure. When you were doing Silver Knights, did you see like a trend during those times, or was it like they just needed that one star in Toronto to really elevate it?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. If you really had to ask, like, if you really break it down, I mean, like, the Raptors coming into the NBA, I think, is a huge, like your Vince Carter years. Like, I think you really have to take our hat off to Vince Carter in Canada basketball, because I think at that point, kids started to put Vince Carter posters on their wall, and not so much hockey. It was we were a hockey country, and we have so many good athletes in this country. Like, I mean, if some of our hockey players played other sports, they would be stars in those sports too, right? So we have a plethora of talent in this country, and I think it took a guy like Vince Carter, where kids were coming home and they're like, I want to be like Vince. Like, it was such a cool thing. And the other thing I really found with when I was coaching Silver Knights is it was an affordable sport. Like, you could put your kid into a house league for it was a reasonably priced sport for a couple of hours a week. And, there was no real gear that you had to buy, like hockey and things like that. It gets really expensive with the equipment and stuff like that in other sports, or even golf. Like I said, the sport I choose, it's so expensive to play the sport. And I think basketball is one of those sports where you just really needed some shoes. And, a lot of the organizations provide you with an outfit, like your shorts and your tank top, and then you get a ball usually, and it's a very inexpensive sport at the time. I mean, once you get to the rep levels and stuff, it gets a little pricier. But I think the combination of those two things, the Raptors coming in and even the Grizzlies, we got to give them a shout out back in the day. And I really think that the affordability of it is what I think helped boom it in this country. We are a multicultural, society here, and, living in the GTA, not everyone can afford to put their kid through AAA hockey or AA hockey, or, even soccer is getting expensive, So I think basketball is still an affordable sport.
And like, in terms of quality, like some of the players, do you think that they get the recognition they deserve? Because a lot of people say, okay, in basketball, like, what's a tier system like? Like, what was some of the players that you would see in terms of their development?
Yeah, we're on a global stage. I'm fortunate enough to have some interactions. My sister and brother-in-law went to school in the States, and when I would chat with even coaches down there, like that's the thing that they say. They're like, Canada basketball's like legit. Like, and I mean, like, even from your Anthony Bennett's and stuff like that, maybe they didn't pan out as well as they should have or they could have. But we've had a lot of great players, and we're starting to get recognized. And I think we saw it even this playoffs. Like Jamal Murray was unbelievable. Like he was like Steph Curry-esque in a couple, like in some of those games. And I really think that we are getting recognized on a global scale, and people are starting to take recognition. And your programs like your Gonzagas and places like that, they kind of shied away from some of the American talent. And, Mark Few went international, and, he had a lot of Canadians on his team. And, you had, your Kevin Pangoses from Holland Landing and stuff like that. And he'd even go to Australia, places like that. And that kind of opened up the game. And now it's not just Americans in these college scholarships. There's a lot of Canadians. And so I think we're really getting the recognition that we deserve.
In terms of like the Olympics, do you think that's going to be a realistic goal, or do you think the States are just so powerful in terms of basketball that they're just going to have a stronghold on that for a couple decades?
I really think like the Americans have unlimited talent. Like they could probably field 3 or 4 teams, in my opinion, and still probably medal. But I mean, yeah, to put 10, 12 guys on a team, Canada could hang with anyone right now. Your top 10 players in Canada, if everyone commits to the program. Because the problem is a lot of times a lot of guys haven't committed to the program, and if our best players don't commit, we don't have enough. Like we don't have 50, 60, 70 guys at that level to choose from. Whereas, the Americans, like I said, could field a bunch of different teams. Like, Steve Nash put his time in the program, like in the early 2000s and stuff like that. Steve Nash played for Canada a lot. As he got older, he couldn't play. His back was bad and whatnot. But, like if those guys commit to the program, yeah, we can hang with most countries. If our top 10, 12 players, we're pretty legit.
Wow. Yeah. And like, I even remember like when Steve Nash was coming up, a lot of people were saying who's going to be that next guy, and everybody was hyping up Andrew Wiggins. Do you think Jamal Murray surpassed him, or is Andrew Wiggins still at that level where he can pass him?
If you asked me this question a year ago, I wasn't really on the Jamal Murray bandwagon as much as maybe some people, but most analysts and most people who are in the know of basketball were talking, and they said that this kid is legit. And like I said, his I just watched a highlight package of him the other day on the computer of just like some of his, like the kid's ability to change directions, to step back. Like he's unbelievable. And I think he will turn out to be the next Steve Nash type player and have that kind of an impact on Canada. I really do.
Yeah, have to wait and see on that. But after watching what he did against the Lakers, it is exciting to see. Once again, for those just joining us here on Vibe 105, this is Sports VIBEtalks segment. I'm Giancarlo Aulino, being joined by Chris Duggan. And Chris, just speaking on basketball in this country, one of the biggest wins, I think, in Toronto Raptors franchise history was against Michael Jordan and that Bulls team from the 90s. Have you seen The Last Dance at all?
Yeah, I did. It was I lived through The Last Dance. I mean, obviously I was, a high school kid when Jordan was in his prime, and, everybody wanted to be Jordan. So I was fortunate enough that where I grew up in a small town up Northern Ontario, and we were only about 4.5 hours from Detroit. So we were a lot of us were Detroit fans, just because, the Red Wings were closer. We could go see games. It was only, it was a 7-hour drive to Toronto, but it was only 4.5 to Detroit. So, and we used to get the Detroit games. And so I was a big, like a lot of my generation up in my hometown, we were Bad Boys fans from, so it was kind of interesting to watch that whole, I was kind of reliving all these moments from my teenage years and whatnot, and the Dennis Rodmans of the world, and it's really fascinating, how good those guys were, and how driven Jordan was, and even like LeBron has that in him, Kobe had it in him, like it was just amazing. It was such a really well produced documentary, I think.
And do you think Jordan, I know a lot of people when he retired, a lot of people still had him at that pedestal. Do you think this changes opinion on him when people see The Last Dance and see the way he treated some of his teammates at times?
Yeah, yeah. You kind of have to separate. I kind of been a big guy. You have to separate sometimes we idolize, athletes and whatnot, and we have to idolize athletes, I think, for their athletic ability, not maybe how they are as humans, because some of them maybe aren't the nicest people to other people and whatnot. Like what Jordan did on a basketball court is unbelievable. Like we cannot debate that. So yeah, some people will be upset with that. I mean, same throwing it back to golf, like what Tiger did in his personal life. A lot of people were not happy with the way he treated his ex-wife and whatnot, but what he did on a golf course is unbelievable, right? So I think you have to separate the two, and you can idolize these guys for their athletic ability, but we don't have to idolize them for their personal life and whatnot. So I think some people would be frustrated with the way Jordan did treat people. It was just his competitive nature, and that's just the way he was. And it was interesting. I didn't know that full story about him, so that was pretty interesting to me. Like that's where I was sort of, 11 o'clock at night watching this show, going, "Wow!" Like perking up, and then next thing you know, it would lead into another episode just because you just wanted more, right?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That was
it couldn't have got released at a better time, right? Like with perfect timing. I mean, we're all stuck indoors looking for something to watch and no sports, and this thing comes along, so it was unbelievable.
Yeah, Michael Jordan saved the day, thankfully, because other than that, there was Tiger King on, and I don't know if too many people wanted to watch that. So,
I'm guilty. I watched the whole series.
So thankfully for Michael Jordan for putting the sports element out there. But on to one thing, because I'm going to just share my screen here. So people watching this on IGTV and YouTube, just going to share a memory here, because just want to get your opinion on if you remember this picture. Last day of school. This is grade 8, 2009. Myself, Michael Rotundo, who you can see with the Maple Leaf hat, Anthony Alcasi to the right, Christian Metallo. We have a Leaf flag, and there you are with the thumbs down. So are you still a Leaf fan?
I was not a Leaf fan at the time. No, not at all.
Are you a Leaf fan now?
Yeah, like so we have one of our hometown friends, a guy that we grew up with named Kyle Dubas, is the GM of the team now. So we obviously want Kyle to be successful, and so we do pull for the Leafs a little bit here and there. So I'm not as much of a hater as I used to be. We'll just say it was a lot of fun. For those of you, we used to have an ongoing bet whether they could make the playoffs or not, and he could fill you in a little bit more on that. But it was all in good fun. It was all in good ribbing. It just hopefully made school fun for you guys to come. That you could poke a little fun at me when my team lost, and I would definitely poke fun back at you guys when either Italy lost in soccer or the Leafs lost the hockey games. So.
And in terms of the Leafs, who would have thought that back then the Raptors would be the one to come up and win the championship, and the Leafs, who everybody and Rogers MLSE spent all that money on, would still be battling for a playoff spot. So I think that was a little interesting timing. Hopefully Dubas figures it out. But Chris, I'd like to thank you for sharing your time and coming on here. And is there any way that anyone, do you have social media, or is there any at the golf course you want to promote?
Come visit us. We're at the Bradford Highlands Golf Club up in Bradford, Ontario, and nice little golf course just north of the city, and very good value for the golf. It's we get a lot of customers coming from everywhere because we're priced where it should be. It's not super expensive, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to play golf. And like I said, we're introducing a lot of new people to the game, and it's unbelievable. And hopefully the game continues to grow. And it's been really great, bud. And it was great talking to you, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for sharing your time and coming on Vibe 105 to talk all about this: coaching, golf, teaching, basketball, Canada basketball, and a little bit of Maple Leaf hockey. And wish you all the best.
Okay, buddy. Take care.
Thanks a lot. That was Chris Duggan. This is Giancarlo Aulino signing off. Stick around because we got plenty more programming right here on Vibe 105.
And now back to your Vibe 105.